Hi, this is Maryellen Boyce, one of your TRU PACE Dietitians, and I'm excited today to talk to you about how to make over your summer menu. But I also want you to think today not just about those favorite summer recipes, but also the recipes that you use throughout the year, because even though these tips or the recipes that we're going to be talking about will be specific for summer, many of the tips will be applicable to recipes throughout the year, whether they're holiday recipes or birthday recipes or just your favorite ones that you like to pull out from time to time. So get your paper and pencil out and let's go on this journey to talk about some of the things we can do to make over our menu in a healthier way. First of all, guess how many calories are in a slice of cheesecake? So here's a New York style cheesecake. How many calories do you think are in a single slice of this, and grams of fat? So hopefully you've come up with a ballpark figure in your mind. But it's 659 calories and 43 grams of fat. That always surprises me because it's almost the amount of calories that you would find in a typical meal. So that's a pretty calorie dense food item. All right, one more before we get into it. How about this potato salad? 1 cup of a traditional potato salad. So how much do you think is in that? It's 317 calories and 22 grams of fat, which may not seem like nearly as much compared to the cheesecake, but actually for a side dish, that's quite high in calories and fat. So keep those in the back of your mind. We're going to compare these two items to healthier versions of these recipes later on. So I want you to first just remember that healthy doesn't mean you can't have the food you love. Sometimes it means that you have just a smaller portion of those full fat and higher calorie foods, and that's okay to have a smaller portion sometimes. And sometimes that means that you can modify that and it can still taste good to have that recipe that you love just with a few modifications and still really enjoy it. So keep those things in mind. All right, let's talk about the nutrients you may want to modify in your meals for health reasons. These are the 4 most common. So fat, sugar, salt, and calories. Now I'm going to not really talk a lot about calories today because really we usually modify fat and sugar to modify total calories. But I'm just noting it here. So let's go by these one by one. Fat, first of all. You may want to limit your total fat, or maybe it's just the saturated fat in your diet, to help reduce the risk of heart disease. Grams of fat are higher in calories, so it's got more than twice as much as both sugar and protein. So that's something that you're gonna think about when you want to reduce your total calories, is to think about that total fat. Sugar is not great if you are managing your blood sugar. If you have prediabetes or diabetes, then that's something you're going to be paying attention to, is the sugar and carbohydrate content. It's also not good for you. It's bad for your teeth, for your dental health. So reducing the amount of added sugars is really great to do, because there's not a lot of nutrients that comes with added sugars. Sometimes we call them empty calories because we don't have a lot of nutrients that comes with those added sugars that you would find in things like desserts. Salt is sometimes necessary to limit when you have problems with your heart, like blood pressure or your retaining fluid, congestive heart failure. Also, sometimes when you have problems with kidneys or fluid retention, then you may need to restrict the salt. One note about salt, though, is that it doesn't have calories. So salt sometimes needs to be restricted, and it just goes to the taste of the food, but not to the total calories. And then lastly, of course, excess calories over time lead to excess weight, which contribute to chronic diseases. So you will want to watch your overall fat and sugar intake to sort of reduce the amount of total calories in your diet. So here are some tips to decrease fat and saturated fat intake. You can reduce fat in your recipes by just cutting back a little bit, just using a little less than what it says, up to a quarter less of what the recipe calls for. And usually you may not really notice it that much. You can use equal amounts of oil for melted butter in a recipe. Now, I want to note here that this doesn't change the total calories. It just changes the type of fat from a saturated fat, or a fat that is solid at room temperature and not as healthy for our heart, to one that is unsaturated or more healthy. So still has quite a few calories when you use equal amounts of oil but less saturated fat. Some recipes, you can use applesauce puree for half of the butter or oil. That helps in recipes maybe like zucchini bread or some cakes, where you just need to have some of that moisture that can really contribute to that texture without taking away from the taste. When you're frying food, you use cooking spray or non-stick pans. And also really the type of method that you use to cook can reduce the amount of added fat. So try baking, broiling, grilling, roasting, stir fry, microwave. Also, if you have an air fryer, that's a really great way to get food cooked with and to have that crispy texture without adding a lot of extra fat. So that's a great tool that we have these days as well. When you use milk in a recipe, use skim milk or evaporated milk rather than the higher fat versions of whole milk, half and half, cream. That can really cut down on the calories without, cutting on the taste, really. One thing that you can do to reduce calories is use more non-starchy vegetables than a recipe asks for. You can double sometimes or substitute some of those non-starchy vegetables to reduce calories. If you have cream cheese in a recipe, you can use the third fat cream cheese, or you can puree cottage cheese till it's a really smooth consistency, as you'll see later on in our cream cheese recipe that we do, and you can really get that good protein without getting the added fat. Instead of sour cream, use plain Greek yogurt or reduced fat sour cream. Also with your cheeses, some cheeses can be really high in saturated fat, but if you use reduced fat cheese or part skim mozzarella, those can be less fattening and less calories. Use egg whites instead of whole eggs, or a 1/4 cup egg substitute for a whole egg. And that really reduces the amount of cholesterol or fat that's found in the yolk, but retains the protein that's found in the egg whites. Use lower fat versions of mayo or salad dressing. That can be really helpful. Also, you can use mayo that may be olive oil mayo or avocado mayo that has that unsaturated fat used as the fat source rather than the saturated fat. So they can be a little healthier, although maybe similar in calories. Trim visible fat off the meat or choose leaner meats. So when it is cold, the meat is cold, you can see that white part is the fat and you can trim that off. But when you cook the meat, that fat heats up and turns to liquid. So ground beef, a lot of times when I'm using ground beef, I will have a lot of melted fat. And before I use the ground beef, I'll rinse off that meat and put it back in my pan and try and get some of that saturated fat off. So that's one way that you can keep the saturated fat lower. All right, here are some tips to decrease your sugar intake. So you can start by reducing the added sugar by about 1/4 to 1/2 cup in recipes. I forgot the cup there, but that should be 1/4 to 1/2 cup. You can add some spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, or almond extract to kind of give that impression of sweetness without having a lot of added sugar. You can use a sugar substitute. Now, some sugar substitutes are not as good with being baked. So you want to see if you're baking something, whether or not, what the directions are for how to use that sweetener. But Splenda is a good one that you can bake with, and they even have some brown sugar options. You can use pureed fruit, low sugar jam, or sugar-free syrup. You could buy fruit canned in their own juices or lightly sugared syrup. So those can help to reduce the amount of added sugar. Don't drink sugar-sweetened beverages routinely. If possible, try diet or sugar-free, or just go for water. More often than not, that will really reduce the added sugar intake in your diet. You can eliminate the sugar bowl. Stop adding extra sugar to things like cereal or coffee and tea if you can, or reduce the amount that you add. Choose breakfast cereals without added sugars, or don't add sugar to them. And really, you can look at the nutrition label to see the added sugars when you're in the cereal aisle to really get an idea. But things like Chex and Cheerios, just plain Rice Krispies, those things don't have any added sugar to them. But look at the back at the nutrition label and compare. Find one that is not have too much added sugar. Have a fruit instead of dessert if you need something sweet after dinner, or set limits to your dessert, right? Make it so that you only have dessert a couple of times a week, or just a small piece. Really give yourself some boundaries to how much and how often you're going to have dessert. Watch out for added sugars in products that you wouldn't suspect. Should be you wouldn't suspect, like spaghetti sauce and some of those things, the sauces and maybe even salad dressings. Some have added sugars and you may not be aware of it. So just look at those labels a little bit more often. All right, let's talk about tips to decrease salt intake in your diet. First, you can just omit the salt altogether or reduce it by half in most recipes, except for those that require, it's required that you use the salt in bread recipes that have yeast. The yeast will overgrow if you don't have salt, so you do need to have the salt, keep the salt in those recipes. You can cook foods without adding extra salt. Don't salt the food at the table, or put the salt and pepper shaker, just the salt, don't put the salt shaker at the table. Use no added salt canned goods, that's really important. Use salt-free seasonings such as herbs, spices, lemon juice, and vinegar. And be aware that, usually seasoning blends have some added salt in them. So be careful when you have, like lemon pepper has really got quite a bit of salt in it. So watch for those things if you need to be conscientious of your salt or sodium intake. And also eat minimally processed foods, because the more processed it is, the more salt is likely to be in it. So if you cook things from scratch or buy things that are not processed, you're going to really not have very much sodium in it at all. And then reduce the amount of packaged and cured meats that you eat. That can also help. Salt is added in that curing process. All right, so we're going to start by comparing a traditional and a modified cheesecake recipe. So this first one, this traditional one, is our 659 calories and 43 grams of fat recipe. And you can see here that there's 4 blocks of regular cream cheese and 2 full cups of sugar and 6 large eggs. So you can see where they got quite a bit of that added fat and calories. Now over here on the modified one, we still have the 2 cups of graham crackers and a similar amount of melted butter, but they've taken 2 cups of cottage cheese, which they will puree till it's nice and creamy, and add in only 1 block of the light cream cheese, and has only 2 eggs. And you get these nice little cute individual serving size cheesecakes here that you top with jam. And the calories on these little babies are only 150. So you get that nice taste that you love without nearly the same amount of calories. So this is a great way to sort of modify a traditional recipe into something that you can still really love and enjoy, but have less of, and have less calories and fat. All right, let's talk about our potato salad here. Our traditional versus our modified potato salad. So the traditional is going to have 5 pounds of potatoes and 2 full cups of mayonnaise. But everything else is pretty similar to the modified potato salad. But they are going to use a head of cauliflower cut up into bite-sized pieces. So here's your non-starchy vegetable coming in to substitute for that starchy vegetable and reducing the amount of total calories in a recipe. And also you use less mayo, and the mayo is a healthier avocado oil mayo in this recipe. So you're reducing it from 317 calories to 210 calories. And I don't know why the calculation shows the fat grams to be so similar. I think they would be less, but there is healthier fat for sure in the modified recipe. So there's that. Just a few other summer ideas, favorites that we can modify. Hamburgers. So here's some things that you can do to make your hamburgers a little healthier. You can start by using a leaner ground beef to make your own hamburger patties rather than use a 73% lean or an 80% lean ground beef. Or you can use reduce the amount of extra fat by reducing the amount of cheese on a cheeseburger. Either you cut your own cheese quite thin using a cheese slicer, or you can buy, actually they have thinly sliced slices at the store as well. Or you can just go without it if you don't really appreciate it or really need that flavor. Using a smaller bun will help to reduce the amount of total calories. And you can also skip the higher calorie condiments, things like mayo or products with mayo in it, bacon. Those types of things can really up the calories unknowingly. For dessert, have an ice cream treat or a popsicle. rather than a big bowl of ice cream. That really keeps your serving size contained and gives you that sweetness without giving you nearly as many calories. You could also choose a fruit like watermelon, which is a great one for the summer season, as a sweet treat to top off a meal. Choose a small piece of candy or something individually wrapped like dark chocolate that can add that sweetness, but it'd be, again, an individual size serving. And you can use lower calorie or sugar substitutes in your desserts. And here are some additional tips for your summer menu makeover. Sometimes you go to a potluck or picnic or family gathering and you're not in control of what food's there. So if that happens, just choose smaller amounts of the higher calorie foods and higher fat and sugar or sodium foods, and more of the non-starchy vegetables or fruits that are there, or maybe only have one serving, right? If you have an opportunity to look at the labels, the nutrient facts, and the ingredient list, that will give you really a lot more insight into what products are healthier when you're at the grocery store or even when you're in your own home. Some recipes take trial and error to find the substitutions that will retain the great taste that you love. So don't give up if the first time you try and make a substitution, it doesn't work well. Keep trying, and hopefully within a few times you'll figure it out and find a substitution to really help that recipe give you the taste you want without all the calories and the fat and sugar that you don't need. Try serve a smaller serving size or individual servings. Don't skip lunch before a big barbecue. You'll just eat more, have a regular lunch, and when you get to the barbecue, have a regular size. Don't overdo it or save up calories. Keep hydrated. Keeping hydrated will help you to not overeat, and drinking with your meal water even before your meal will help to reduce the amount of food you will want to eat at a meal. Consider grilling marinated chicken or fish rather than hamburgers or hot dogs. Fish is good fats for you, so include more fish if you like that. Add lots of fruits and veggies as a side or an appetizer. They're in season all summer. Take advantage of it. They're cheaper. They taste better in the summer. So eat as many as you can. And be the one that brings the healthy option to the potluck or the barbecue. Others will thank you too. You're not the only one out there that wants something healthy. So I think it's a really good play to bring something that that you're going to love that's healthy as well. So this ends our presentation today. As always, if you want to have more of a discussion with your personal dietitian, please reach out. We'd love to help talk you through some of these things, to help you figure out what modifications you can make to your favorite recipes. And so please reach out if you have any questions or would like any personal counseling. Thank you. Have a great day.